terms of the strategy that we use. All right, let's take some more phone calls. 800-525-7000. We've got some lines open today. Feel free to call right now. To Louisiana. Hi, Chris. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call. My question was, I've been hearing a lot of people talk about tithing, because I know tithing has always been, it's because you got so many people coming out and it's on prosperity and all. My question was, would I take the money, if I'm in debt, credit card debt or whatever, should I take that money and try to knock out my debt first and then start back tithing? Because some people, depending on what church you go to, you need to pay God first, so you're gonna, that's why you're in the situation you're in. And it could just be for management. You don't know how to manage your money. So, I mean, how would you do that? You got a lot of debt, you got kids, you got family, you got stuff. When I just say, well, I'm gonna just take all my time money and let this deal go. You know what I'm saying? And how would you do that?
I love this question, Chris, because you're hitting on something that's really key here, and that is this idea that we have competing priorities. And the things that you're describing are all good things. Providing for your family, check. Paying down debt, check. Giving as unto the Lord cheerfully and with a glad heart and as an act of worship, absolutely, check. So how do you balance these competing priorities? And I think, the first thing to recognize is that it all belongs to God, right? And so we've been tasked as his money managers, and our call is to be found faithful. So we go back to the scriptures and we say, what's in the scriptures with regard to how we should handle our money? Well, clearly we're to honor our obligations. That means to pay back our debt. Clearly there are warnings in scripture around debt. It's not a sin to borrow, but there's plenty of warnings in scripture that should cause me to say, I better be moving to get out of debt over time. Yeah, we should be savers as well. There's precious treasure and oil in the house of the wise. The foolish man swallows it up, is what Proverbs tells us. We're absolutely told to provide. We're said that we're worse than an unbeliever if we don't provide. And yes, we should give generously. So how should we approach that? And here's what I would say to you. If you are in a place where debt is holding you back, I would say, that has to be a priority. Getting to a proper amount in savings has to be a priority. And I think giving has to be a priority as well. Now, how do we balance it? Well, here's the approach I would take. I would say, first, continue to give. Now, you may decide, and this is ultimately between you and the Lord. Remember, God's not an accountant. We don't want to make this, a legalistic kind of thing where we're giving to get and, slipping into that prosperity gospel that you referenced. That's clearly not the biblical worldview. But I would say continuing to give something systematically is important because it's going to continue to keep you giving unto the Lord and continue to exercise that giving muscle, if you will. Now, you may decide for a season between you and the Lord, you're going to back that down. So instead of you automatically giving a 10% off of your increase, you may say for a season, I'm going to back that down to 5% or 3% because I want to get out from under this debt that's, creating a hardship in my life. It's creating a burden. I'm paying a fortune in interest. And so I'm going to back down my giving. I wouldn't say you eliminate your giving, continue to do something, but then with that money you have available, and I'd do the hard work in your budget to look at every expense and see where you can cut back first. Then I'd build up a $1,500 emergency fund, and once you did that, I'd put every available dollar against that high interest consumer debt until it's gone, and then go right back to your giving and bump that back up. That's just my best advice, Chris. You pray about it, see where the Lord directs you. I'll be right back. Stay with us. Our thanks to Certified Kingdom Advisor Wade Chessman, President and Wealth Advisor, and his team at Chessman Wealth Strategies in Dallas for their support of faith and finance. Their goal is to help their clients expand their understanding of biblical financial principles and how to implement them. The website is chessmanwealth.com. The phone number is 214-572-2120. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
I love AFR. You say it's on the radio too?
Here at American Family Radio, we know that many people find their audio entertainment in other places than the radio. So our programming is available with the AFR app on Apple and Android devices, through Amazon Alexa, and now available on Roku.
I just love podcasts.
too. American Family Radio, streaming our podcast, now available wherever you are. And we're on the radio. Absolutely free. We know you've learned to be suspicious of those words, but really, you can get biblical financial wisdom delivered to your inbox each week absolutely free. Articles, videos, podcasts, and special offers on biblical resources. Nearly 60,000 people receive our free weekly wisdom email, and you can too. Create your free FaithFi account by going to faithfi.com and click sign up to begin receiving weekly wisdom in your inbox.
We are grateful for support from Eventide Investments on the Faith and Finance program. Eventide's approach to values-based investing is grounded in the belief that humankind was created in the image of God, with intrinsic dignity, value, and worth. Eventide calls this investing that makes the world rejoice. More information is available at eventideinvestments.com. That's eventideinvestments.com.
Delighted to have you with us today on Faith and Finance on American Family Radio. Taking your questions today at 800-525-7000. I've got room for maybe 2 more questions here before we round out the broadcast. Again, 800-525-7000. You can call right now. But first, it's Monday, which means Bob Dahl stops by. Bob is Chief Investment Officer at Crossmark Global Investments. You might see him regularly on CNBC and Fox Business. Bob is a Wall Street veteran, but he also approaches everything he does through a biblical lens. And Bob, a lot going on in the markets today. Obviously, front and center is what's taking place between Israel and Hamas. What do you make of that, and how will that move the markets?
Well, obviously there's a lot of red on the screen, but I have to admit, Rob, less red than I thought there might be. I thought the markets would be down a bit more. Now, the bond market's closed for Columbus Day, as you undoubtedly know, and stocks are down some, but it's not a big amount. Now, oil, remember, oil fell from its big run up over the last week or so, $10, and it's only up $3 or $4 relative to the sad events over the weekend. So put that in perspective. Look, the world is always an uncertain place. It's become a little more uncertain, increasingly dangerous. It's going to put upward pressure on defense budgets around the world. You know that Saudi Arabia and Israel were making some progress to normalize relations, and that gets put back, which is not good. So the number of hot spots in the world, Rob, sadly goes up by 1 in the last few days.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, Bob, today was a special edition of Dahl's Deliberations, which, by the way, folks, you can sign up to receive that in your inbox weekly at crossmarkglobal.com, because it was your quarterly edition where you look both back at Q3 as well as the forward-looking outlook from here with the markets and the economy. Just summarize your take on where we find ourselves.
Yeah, so a couple words about the third quarter. The main event of the third quarter was the rise in interest rates out the curve. Government bond yields moved up a lot, from trough to peak, almost 100 basis points, a whole percentage point. And that set equities back simply because of valuation. It probably raised the probability of a recession, given that higher interest rates choke off credit and create some expenses people didn't expect. And the rapidity, the pace of the rise is concerning. So where do we go from here? Well, we're all going to be watching the bond market. We'll be watching how the Fed reacts to it. The inflation numbers, which of late have been a little bit better, including the employment report last Friday. But I believe for the stock market, we're still stuck in this 4,200 to 4,600 range, sitting just below 4,300 as we talk here, Rob, having come down from almost 4,600 at the peak on July 31st. So I think there's going to be a lot of toing and froing as we try to get a handle on what does the economy look like and earnings into 2024. Third quarter earnings are going to come out fast and furious. We suspect they will be okay as the first and second quarter were, meaning no worse than expected expected, but down a bit, and that's just not helpful. And of course, we'll be listening carefully to the conference calls about how business is looking for the fourth quarter and into 2024.
Yeah, very good. That's helpful. By the way, we will be taking some phone calls here before we round out the program at 800-525-7000. If you have a financial question today, you can call that. We'll tackle any topic. Bob, you mentioned there this soft landing that's obviously the best case scenario for the economy, and what the Fed is aiming for is going to be largely driven by the consumer. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. And the variables around the consumer are how many of us are working. And with the employment report last Friday, more than we thought. That's good news. Although wage growth slowed more than expected, so that's a positive for inflation, but a negative for consumers and their paychecks. I think there's a question: how much excess savings does the consumer still have from the pandemic? There are a lot of views. Some say it's just about finished. Others say it's going to last into the first few months of next year, and a lot of that will have to do with whether or not we have an economic slowdown / a recession.
Yeah, very good. Bob, is there a case to be made that we're heading into a period, if we look out over the next decade or two, that the S&P 500, that stocks in general are going to have less return than we might have seen historically? You know, the average annual return, I think, over the last 100 years is still north of 10%. Is there a case to be made that we should be ready to accept returns less than that?
Yes, I don't know how we avoid a lower set of returns, Rob. Valuations and earnings progress determine stock prices, and valuations are on the higher side, and earnings growth is dependent on profit margins, among other things, and they're at the high end. So my guess is that 10% that we've enjoyed over the long term, and even higher than that in the 10 years prior to the pandemic, is going to be challenged, and we're probably stuck with mid-single digits, call it 5 to 7%. We actually put a white paper out on this a few months ago. If anybody goes on our website, they can find that.
CrossmarkGlobal.com. Bob, before we let you go today, tell us the funds that you manage there at Crossmark.
So large cap core, large cap value, large cap growth, and equity market neutral. We manage those 4 mutual funds and separately managed accounts alongside of all 4.
And all 4 in every fund there at Crossmark through a biblical lens, meaning avoiding companies, embracing other ones, and so forth, right?
Exactly, helping people to put their investments right with their values.
Very good. Bob, we always appreciate your insights, my friend.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, God bless you. That's Bob Dahl, Chief Investment Officer at Crossmark Global Investments. You can learn more and sign up for his Dahl's Deliberations, and check out the white paper he was referring to at CrossmarkGlobal.com. All right, folks, we've got some time maybe for one more question today before we round out the broadcast at 800-525-7000. So let's do that. We'll go to Louisiana. Glenda, thank you for being a first-time caller. How can I help you?
Yes, I was just wondering on tithing. Are we supposed to tithe like on everything? Like, for instance, I sold a car and I did tithe off the money that I received. And I'm just wondering, on everything that we receive money, are we supposed to tithe on it?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Glenda. Here's what I would say. First of all, I love your desire to be generous and give to the Lord. Second of all, you can't outgive God, so it's never a bad idea to give. And I love the principle of the tithe as a starting point. It's really a beginning place where we say, as God prospers us through whatever increase comes our way, selling an asset at a profit or a paycheck or an inheritance or even a check from Social Security, I love the idea that we give systematically and proportionately back to the Lord, starting with the local church, God's plan A. Now, when it comes to giving a tithe, if we're going to apply that Old Testament principle, it would be on the increase. Glenda. So typically you would not have, except in a few rare situations, with a car, maybe where it's a collectible, you'd sell a car for less than you paid for it, because you buy it, it depreciates, you run it and wear it and use it down, and then you sell it for much less than what you bought it for. So there's not an increase there. The increase would only occur on the sale of an asset when it appreciates. So think buying a house and then you sell it for more than you bought it for, 5 or 10 years later. Think buying, gold and it rises in value and then you sell it, or a piece of art. Not usually the case with a car. So never a bad idea to give as the Lord prospers you. And obviously, as you have that sale of that asset, you've got money available to give. But in terms of the principle of the tithe, it would be based on an increase, and you didn't have an increase in almost every case when you sell a car. Does that make sense?
It does, and I really appreciate that, because I was just curious, about that, because I love giving to the Lord.
Yeah.
So everything I receive, I try to, give to the Lord from it. But I was just wondering if it was mandated, through scriptures to give. But it does make sense on the increase. I didn't even think of that, but that was very good.
Very good. Well, I'm delighted to hear that, and I so appreciate your desire to be a faithful giver, Glenda. The Lord will honor that. And, here's the reality. We know that we can't take it with us, but God's word tells us we can send it on ahead, and that's exactly what you're doing. So thanks for checking in with us today. We appreciate it very, very much. Well, folks, we have covered a lot of ground today, and always grateful to have you with us. By the way, we talked about for a moment today charitable gift annuity through the AFA Foundation. If you'd like to learn more about how you can make a gift to AFA, receive lifetime income, and then have what's remaining go to the American Family Association at your death, it's called a charitable gift annuity, and actually some recent law changes have made this even more attractive. You can now fund that in other ways, including through what's called a legacy IRA. If you'd like to learn more, contact our friends at the American Family Association Foundation at afafoundation.net. That's afafoundation.net. I love talking about giving, and if you'd like to give to support the work here at Faith and Finance, you can do that at our website, faithfi.com. That's faithfi.com. Just click the give button. Folks, at the end of the day, with all the uncertainty around us and the horrible atrocities from over the weekend taking place in Israel at the hand of terrorists, Lord, we just ask that the Lord would be with you, that he would guide you, that we'd be reminded that we need to place our trust in him, and that includes in the way that we handle his resources, being a demonstration and a testimony to the world of our dependence on God as our provider. On behalf of my team today, Jim Henry, Robert Youngblood, and Devin Patrick, I'm Rob West. This is Faith and Finance on American Family Radio. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association.
American Family Studios is made up of a team of producers, directors, and writers. Hosted Bruce, director of American Family Studios. The heart of what we do at American Family Studios is to support and affirm the mission of American Family Association. American Family Studios products are available at afastore.net. This is American Family Radio, the listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
There were dozens of Israeli citizens and soldiers inside the Gaza Strip that were taken hostage, now prisoners of war. Hamas and Islamic Jihad say they've taken them underneath Gaza into the tunnel system, and it will be nearly impossible for the Israelis to find where these hostages are held. And so even once they go in on the ground, it's not like they'll be able to conduct a raid as they do in the West Bank and simply rescue them right away.
Meanwhile, analysts worry about intelligence failures in the lead up to that attack by Hamas against Israel. Peter Doocy has more from the White House.
There was no 3 a.m. phone call in the White House residence as Israel was being attacked. President Biden says that he learned about all of this at 7:30 or 8 in the morning. That would be about 8 hours after the first incursions happened. President Biden must also now work with his team to figure out how exactly the vaunted U.S. and Western spy operation missed the planning stages of the Hamas attack on Israel. So far, White House officials are not willing to say what they think exactly happened, what broke down.
Florida Congressman Brian Mast says the U.S. needs to continue to support Israel to defeat Hamas and end the bloodshed they have been committing.
We need to support Israel until the body count is 5,000, 1,000, 10,000, 15,000, whatever it is, until they kill every last terrorist, because they are essentially Arab Nazis.
As the fighting rages, Paco has multiple damage as the world moves to a move and it is Israel who is fighting the land.
He keeps telling us to what's wrong. And he's been responsible for 1948 when Germany attacked the Jews. For 4,000 years before that, it was called Judea and Samaria. They told us that is the entire land of the indigenous people.
He says no matter the outcome of the GOP vote, Republicans need to come together quickly to fill the spot.
We're going to prove to the American people in the next 48 hours that we actually have some adults in the room in the GOP conference. It's very simple. We have two candidates. I'm supporting Steve Scalise. I love Jim Jordan as well, so we can't really go wrong either way.
A traditional values group has a solution to the problem.
To a women's prison with many inmates who have been battered or raped. Jelaine Appling of Wisconsin Family Action tells AFN the women can very well be abused.
This is phenomenally dangerous. It is outrageous, and it should be stopped.
She says it defies not only common sense, but reality.
First of all, it is impossible for a person to change his or her sex. Impossible. You can't change XX and XY. And so when you have men who have molested women, all of a sudden saying, oh, I want to identify as women, everybody should be paying attention.
Appling says the solution is as simple as explaining there are only two genders, and that is change government officials who make those decisions.
To get better outcomes, we have to have better people in the places that make the difference. So we need to be paying attention to who's going to be elected to governor, who's going to hold the offices in our Senate and in our Assembly, and who's going to be the Attorney General.
Regrettably, imprisoned men in most left-wing states are being allowed to serve time in female prisons. And Appling believes it might take a lawsuit because of the harm to bring about a solution. I'm Charlie Butts.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I must be here.
Are you able to stand steadfast in this post-Christian world? Join Frank Turek, Gary Habermas, Hugh Ross, Richard Howe, and more than 40 other speakers for Southern Evangelical Seminary's 29th Annual Steadfast National Conference. No matter where you are on your faith journey, you will leave this event better equipped to penetrate the culture with the gospel and defend the truthfulness of Christianity. It all happens October 13th and 14th at First Baptist Church in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Register now at ses.edu/national conference.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network for this Monday, October the 9th, 2023. Thank you for listening to AFR. Again, I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Battagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Fred Jackson.
Good morning, Tim.
Folks, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, we will be having our twice a year share-a-thon. We do it once in the spring and once in the fall. American Family Radio Share-a-thon, and we just encourage you to pray for us here at AFR, and also to make a donation to the ministry and be as generous as you can. You know, this is not inexpensive what we're doing here in terms of our radio network. We have to maintain 179, I think it is, radio stations across the USA, and to get the word of God out, the truth about what's happening in our country and around the world. And so I would just ask you to participate in our share-a-thon sometime during the next 3 days. We'll be having our regular programming, although we'll be focusing on our financial needs here. So make that a matter of prayer, if you would, for us here at AFR. Fred, was it Friday night?
Early Saturday morning Israel time, around 6:30, is when Hamas terrorists crossed over the border from Gaza into numerous towns in Israel and began to attack and kill citizens. As of this morning, at least 800 Israeli citizens have been murdered.
Now, this would include the ground killings, as it were, by the Hamas terrorists.
Yes.
But it also included the barrage of rockets they unleashed, right?
Yes.
Which numbered 2,000, did I read, or more than that?
There's different estimates. At least, you know. Trying to choose my words carefully. We become somewhat accustomed to the skirmishes.
Sure, yeah.
Over the years of missiles coming in from Gaza, the Iron Dome taking care of most of that, and then it ends after a couple of days. This is far, far, far different. Israeli people, military people are describing this as not only Israel's 9/11, but something 10 times worse when you compare population size to what's been going on. What has happened is Hamas terrorists have invaded Israel. That's what happened at 6:30 on Saturday morning, Israel time. Going house to house, killing people, raping women and children. And this is not just, are those just reports? No. Hamas had people videotaping this. The videos that you have been seeing through the weekend are taken by Hamas terrorists. They are proud of what they are doing. I want to play for you, and I just got this a few moments ago. This is the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. His name is Jonathan Greenblatt. He was on MSNBC this morning. He is a liberal, all right? He is a liberal. But I want you to listen to the emotions that he had. He says he loves MSNBC, but he had to set them straight about the language they were using to describe Hamas terrorists. So, Brent, are you ready with that? Let's play a bit of that.
I'll be honest, I am angry. I am angry with the world that allowed the dehumanization of Israelis and sanitized the terrorism of Hamas. I must say, I love this show and I love this network, but I've got to ask, who's writing the scripts? Hamas? The people who did this, they are not fighters, Jonathan. They are not militants, and I'm looking right at the camera. They are terrorists. It is a barbarian who rapes and brutalizes women, who kills children in front of their parents, and then brings them over to Gaza, who literally, we've heard all these reports, and we know these aren't just reports. These were filmed gleefully by the barbarians who committed these grotesque crimes.
Let me, that was, what was the fellow's name there?
Jonathan Greenblatt.
Okay, and
he's the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League.
Okay, the ADL, Defamation League. They are a Jewish organization, akin to maybe what you would, the NAACP, ACLU, African Americans. They're very liberal in their politics, and but even he's upset with some of the quote mainstream media and how they're describing this the Islamic terrorists that are Hamas. For those who don't know the geography of this, I just wanted to, I think that would be helpful. Then we can talk about the politics of it and the religious aspects of it. And you guys feel free to chime in and correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm no expert on this, but I've traveled in Israel enough to know what the situation is in terms of the geography. So you can look at a map. I mean, you have Israel, which stretches from the Lebanese border up to the north. That's north of the Sea of Galilee, probably about 20 miles. And it borders with Lebanon and with Syria. And that's where the Golan Heights are, on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee and northward. Okay. Then you go all the way down to the Red Sea, right? Keep on scrolling down to the Red Sea.
Yeah, that'd be
Gilead,
Gulf of Aqaba, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So in the country of Israel, you have what's called the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is a small piece of land, relatively speaking, that borders with Egypt, the Mediterranean Sea, and then it stops probably 80 miles south of Tel Aviv, for example, maybe 50 miles southwest of Jerusalem. All right, so in the Gaza Strip, there only lives Arabs, called Palestinians by a lot of people in this area, and it's a hellhole. I'm not laughing because it's because of that. I'm just saying that's the reality of the city.
It's very, very crowded. A lot of people.
Very crowded. It's very poor. But also this is where Hamas resides
and rules
as a basically as a gang, as the mobsters.
Right.
All right. And so they rule. They're not elected. Okay. This isn't a country per se. It's not a country at all.
Well, I think they did vote for
their
Hamas.
Leaders.
Yeah.
They voted
but
for Hamas.
It's not a country.
But if they don't vote for Hamas to get their heads chopped off.
That's
my point.
It's like voting. It's like, well, you voted for the mafia last election.
Right.
Well, yeah, because I didn't want my shop blown up.
Right. So this is where Hamas, the terrorist organization, resides, and they are the ones responsible now for this. As you say, Fred, over the years, they have these occasional rocket launches from Gaza. Israel typically responds by bombing a building or two or three. Well, this was an all-out declaration of war, basically, by Hamas against Israel and the Israeli citizens. That gives you an idea of what the geopolitical aspects are of this. But here's the thing: I was surprised to learn, I did not know this, that there was a kibbutz, which is an Israeli community, okay, a Jewish community, built within eyesight, appeared to me, of the Gaza Strip. Did you guys know this?
Mm-hmm. I knew there were kibbutzes around there.
Anyway, I was surprised that they built those that close to Gaza, to the Gaza Strip. But anyway, that's the lay of the land, so to speak. Anything you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You can go back to biblical times. That's where the Philistines lived,
right?
Approximately where Gaza is today. That's where the Philistines were. So that area has been the enemy area of Israel for thousands of years. Hamas Hamas terrorists are supported by Iran. They are
Openly.
Openly.
I mean, this isn't we have to guess. Iran says, yes, we're supportive of.
Yes. And then, Netanyahu, the leader, the Israeli leader, has often said, we live in a rough neighborhood. And that's almost something to laugh at when he says that, because what we're talking about, Hezbollah controls Lebanon for the most part. That's where they're based.
Yeah, they're like Hamas, but they're in Lebanon.
And they're Shia.
And they're Shia. They're Shia. They're Shia where Hamas is Sunni.
Yes.
The Islamic world is divided by Sunni and Shia. So the Sunnis are 80% of the Muslim world, including Saudi Arabia and Egypt. The Shia are in more like Iran and Iraq, maybe.
Yeah, and it's different percentages. So you're going to have Yemen is, I don't know if it's mostly Shia.
I think
Turkey has got a lot of Shia, but
the Sunnis and the Shias, they don't like each other either.
Right.
Okay. They're rivals as well, but because each of them consider the other one basically having corrupted the religion of Islam. So they don't like each other either.
But they hate Israel.
But they hate Israel. They have a common.
It's same in the West Bank. You have Palestinian terrorists in the West Bank. So Israel, with the exception, I guess, of the Deep South, is surrounded by people who want them wiped off the face of the earth. That's it. They don't want to live in peace. The Iranians, as we well know, they always say they want Israel wiped off the face of the earth and the United States right afterwards.
Yes. However, I would offer a bit of a caveat to that. Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, these are border countries to Israel. Those three in particular have really had pretty good relationships with Israel over the last few decades, and have kept the peace. All right. Syria, you got to watch them, but they've had their own internal warfare. That Syria is also where ISIS has been operating, if you remember ISIS. So anyway, that's I know it gets confusing and it's complicated, and there are many different players here.
Yes.
But the common problem that the Israelis have to deal with is the hatred for the Jewish people promoted by many in the Islamic community.
That's for sure.
Am I right,
and
Ed?
especially Iran. Iran is the main driver of the Shia version of Islam, and they're like 75 to 100% Shia. Iraq is probably next, and then Yemen in terms of Shia population. And there's so many things that you could point to. Historically, there was a 10-year war between Iraq and Iran. That was before we got involved over
that was
there.
Saddam Hussein.
Yeah. And so the controversies internally between in the Muslim world have been ongoing, Sunni and Shia. Saudi Arabia and Israel. If I'm not mistaken, didn't the king of Saudi Arabia, didn't he recognize the state of Israel? That's been an ongoing thing that nobody wanted to do, was recognize the existence of the state of Israel.
He did. I think the Crown Prince.
Yeah, the Crown Prince
of Saudi Arabia.
And so,
and Jordan has too.
And so you have. So you wonder, well, what is Hamas trying to do here? Well, maybe what Hamas, I don't want to try to get into their head. It's, their heads, they're filled with bats and other evil things, but maybe they're trying to stop these Sunni countries from making peace with Israel. Maybe they're trying to start a wider war against Israel. We know that Iran has said that they want to wipe Israel off the map. That's what Hezbollah in Lebanon has said. That's what the charter of Hamas has said, that ground that Israel exists on is Muslim territory, and Israel needs to be pushed into the sea. Now you've got Iran trying to finish off their nuclear program to get nuclear weapons. I mean, this place is in the Middle East is a tinderbox and could ignite World War III. And
other than that, it's a great day.
Yes.
You know what? we got going on here, the United States is always been supportive of Israel through Democrat or Republican administrations. The Congress of the U.S. has always been supportive of Israel, even Democrat and Republican leaders. However, there is a faction now, it seems to be a growing faction inside the Democrat Party. It's not in the Republican Party. That is siding with Hamas, basically, in this because, well, tell me why, Fred.
Well,
who these people are.
Well, there was a group that protested in favor of the Hamas attack against Israel in New York City on Sunday, yesterday. It was organized by the Democratic Socialists of America. Several of the so-called squad members are members of that group, along with some other. The report says about 6 members of Democratic Congress members are members of this Democratic Socialists of America. They paraded through the streets of New York yesterday, hundreds of them celebrating what Hamas was doing to the Israeli citizens, celebrating the activities of terrorists. One of them even showed a Nazi sign on her cell phone. These are people who hate the nation of Israel.
And hate Jews.
And hate Jews. There were also groups, Harvard University groups, celebrating what Hamas was doing in Israel. So we have elements, including members, Democrat members of Congress, who support this idea. Rashida Tlaib is one of the squad members.
She's from the Detroit area.
Yes.
Yeah, Michigan.
She's all in. She calls Israel an apartheid state. That's how she refers to Israel. And basically she said in her statement, Israel had this coming to them. That's how much they hate the Jewish people.
Yeah. When she says apartheid state, that's not true. Apartheid is like what you had in South Africa,
right?
Where you had the whites basically keeping the blacks from participating in government or society.
That's a real example of systemic racism. When people call the U.S. as systemically racist, that's untrue. Under apartheid, you had the laws saying black people can't do this, they can't do that.
So that's not true in Israel. Israel's, I think it's 80% Jewish, 20% Arab, roughly. And the Arabs are able to participate in society in Israel. Now, they live in their own communities for the most part. East Jerusalem is Arab. The other parts of Jerusalem would be Jewish. In the northern part, Nazareth is Arab for the most part, where Tiberias and Haifa would be predominantly Jewish. But the Arabs have places in the Knesset, which is the Congress of Israel. They serve in the military of Israel. The commerce is back and forth, but the Arabs and the Jews. There are even diverse neighborhoods in Jerusalem where Arabs and Jews live peacefully. So it's not a apartheid situation. These people like Hamas, it's a religious. It's as much a religious attack, religiously motivated attack, as it is a land. We want the land attack, right? They hate the Jews, and they want the Jews driven into the sea. And this goes back to 1948, when the Jewish state of Israel was established post-World War II by the United Nations. I think, was it the United Nations at the time, or was it the League of Nations?
No, it was the United
UN.
Nations.
Was the UN by then?
Yeah.
Post-World War II, the UN, didn't the British occupy that area then? It was British mandate.
Right? After World War II, they split up the Middle East. So you had the Ottoman Empire in World War I, and then
after World War I, they divided the Middle East into, so you had a country like Turkey, which was forced to be, as a result of World War I, to be a secular state, could not be an Islamic state. And then after World War II, the Allies were in charge of the Middle East and making sure that that was set up. And so Israel became, what we now know as Israel, became an ethnic state for the Jews fleeing the horrors of the Nazism and the deaths in Europe, and they were given a place so that their homeland, essentially, allowed to go back to their homeland so that they would have a place that they could go and live. And then the Arab countries, as soon as the United Nations did that, the Arab countries told the Palestinians living in what would become Israel, you better leave, because if this happens, we're attacking Israel.
And it's been that way ever since.
And those Palestinians never did go back.
Right. Many of them went to Jordan. Okay. And here's another aspect of it. There's so many layers here. By the way, you're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Okay, we can revisit this in a minute, but the U.S. has announced that they are, I don't know who announced it, that we're sending
Lloyd Austin.
Military assets. Lloyd Austin, he's the Secretary of Defense, right?
Correct. Our military, there was a carrier group doing exercises in the Mediterranean. He has directed them to basically go down to approach the Israeli coast. No one expects American boots on the ground in this issue, but the desire is on the part of the Israeli government that the Americans will resupply them with ammunition at least. And I think the American forces are willing to do that. And they are there, I guess. I mean, these carrier groups, they have fighter jets aboard them, that sort of thing. So at the very least, it's an intimidation factor.
It's a we stand with Israel public statement.
It is, very much so.
And if Iran was to do anything, that carrier strike group would is there just in case, letting Iran and other countries, Syria, Hezbollah coming from Lebanon, letting them know that we not only stand with Israel, we have assets in place to help them.
Yes, very much so. You talk about Iran, we can talk about this after the break. There's a lot of people who are saying Iran helped to orchestrate this. There's also talk about how did Israel allow this to happen?
Listen, Iran is probably the most dangerous threat to world peace, such that it is. That would include North Korea, China. Iran they are run by the mullahs. The mullahs are the religious leaders of Islam within Iran, and they control that country and their economy and everything about Iran. Basically, they're a terrorist state. We'll be back momentarily with more.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.